Hi everyone, we're going to start. That's okay. Right, so thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and a special thanks to everybody who's given up their evening to speak and share evidence. Welcome everybody to the first Education and Local Economy Scrutiny Commission of the new council year. My name's Councillor Cassandra Brown and I'm the chair of the commission. I sat on the commission 2 years ago, so it's great to be returning. Please note that we are not a decision-making body, and the Commission's role is to make recommendations for consideration by Cabinet, which we'll do as we go through the year. There are no planned fire alarm tests this evening. If you do hear a fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is at St John's Churchyard off Druid Street. Council security staff will be on hand to direct you. There are public toilets, which are located just off the main reception area. And please do switch your mobile phone to silent whilst in the meeting room if you haven't already. Any members of the public here tonight are welcome to film, audio record, photograph, or tweet the public proceedings of the meeting. And I do ask you to please be considerate towards other people in the room when they're speaking and take care not to disturb the proceedings. If you are filming the meeting, please don't film anybody in the audience. And you can find a copy of the council's protocol for reporting and filming on the council website. The council's free internet is called Southwark Free Wi-Fi. If anyone would like to use it, it doesn't need a password. And this meeting is being live streamed via the Microsoft Teams platform on YouTube, and it will be uploaded to the Southwark Council YouTube channel by tomorrow. For officers and members presenting slides, please log in to the Microsoft Teams meeting link in advance so that you can share your screen, and also ensure your laptop microphone is turned off while you're presenting so we don't get any feedback. And may I remind members to raise your hand if you do wish to speak, and please wait until I've given you permission before speaking. And lastly, can I ask members to refrain from digressing onto other issues and keep their comments and questions concise. According to the agenda and the timings, I'm hoping this meeting will finish just after 9 p.m. So let's see if we can achieve that. So on to the agenda business. So item 1 is apologies. Have we got any apologies for this evening? Nope. Okay. No apologies have been received. So now I'm just going to go around and confirm the voting members of the commission. So please would voting and non-voting members present in the room show their hand and respond when I call their name out. I've already introduced myself. So Councillor Rachel Bentley, Vice Chair.
Present and a voting member.
Thank you. Councillor Sunil Chopra. Councillor Renata Hanvas.
I'm present and a voting member. Thank you.
Councillor John Hartley.
Also here.
Great. Councillor Youssef Hussain.
Hi, present and voting.
Councillor Irina von Wies.
Present and voting.
And co-opted members Martin Bracknell.
Present and voting.
Jonathan Clay.
Present and.
And Marcin Jagodonsky. Okay, cool. Right. Okay, so on to item 2, notification of any items of which the chair deems urgent. There are no urgent items for this evening, but I will flag a slight change in the order of the agenda, which means that Councillor Ali, the cabinet member, will do her interview first, and next will be the chair of the Parent Carer Forum, and then finally the item on consent. We have 3 substantive items tonight, mostly focused on education, and we'll discuss the work plan for further meetings at the end. So on to the third item, disclosure of interests and dispensations. Does any member here tonight declare any interests or dispensations in respect of any of the items of business? Please do say now if so. Okay, cool. Okay, all right, just to flag that Marcin has said that he's going to be late, so he should arrive at some stage this evening. Okay, so on to item 4, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 14th of March 2024. Do members have anything they'd like to raise in regards to those minutes? Is it? Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I'll take them as read and approved. Okay, so then we're on to the substantive business of the evening, starting with Councillor Ali. Thank you very much for coming, and it's over to you to share your overview of your year ahead in your role.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. It's good to see everybody. The lead member interview usually comes at the end, doesn't it? So basically, yes. And so it's great to be here at the beginning, of the term, really. So what I've done is I'm going to counter through some of the things rather than my favourite topics. I'm going to go through most of them, which I think will be of interest to you. And maybe, as we know, scrutiny is about holding lead members and officers to account. Of course it is, but there's also a space, isn't it, to improve policy development. So, if for anyone interested, I'll give a nod to that through this presentation. I'll just say that I've got colleagues with me. I've got Alistair, the DCS, and Stephen Douglas, community safety lead and obviously refugee director, and other Anna and others here. And I think Mike's here as well. So when we get into the questions, if there's any technicalities that I can't answer, then hopefully we'll be able to build it head on. If not, we'll come back. Okay, so this is my portfolio. It's been slimmed down in order to get onto the slide, but you get the gist of it, really. So I will not be taking any questions on anything other than, no. I mean, but basically, there's my portfolio, and you've got what it is. So the last 12 months then have posed huge challenges for us all, not least for the many children, families and young people and refugees that needed support. We continue to deliver. My teams sat behind me continue to deliver exemplary services, because that is our mission, to stand up for people in Southwark. And, just a backward look before we go forward, as Tory Britain concluded, we saw poverty, desperation everywhere, all made worse by the sharp deterioration in mental health, the man-made crisis in special education needs and disabilities, and a pronounced rise in school absences. Also, looking at the refugee part of my portfolio, we saw nothing short of a refugee crisis brought about by the so-called streamlined asylum processing policy, something which you should celebrate, getting a decision, but leave it to the Home Office as it was then. They made a complete disaster of it. Okay then, so leadership, that's obviously important for a lead member and directors, so and the impact that it has. So children's services leadership then, well, youth justice service leadership came under close scrutiny. As we know, our frontline services continue to be an example to others, and the political leadership, so that's not just us, but it's you guys as well, is recognised for our expertise and sheer determination. So not my words, these are out in the, in the inspection results. Corporate parenting, that transformed. We put the DCS, Alistair and myself, set about transforming the way that we manage corporate parenting. And I want to thank, all the people that have been on corporate parenting for making that transformation really improve outcomes. Children and young people are at the centre of everything that we do, and they raise key concerns. Obviously, they've raised housing, and we can say that we have managed to make absolute improvements on that. We've opened up one new care home and have already recruited a manager to our second care home, because that was the issue about having to place people too far away, so we can place quite close. So that's been a success. We have been successful in our bid to the DfE to expand our offer of lifelong links programme for children and care leavers, to actually build meaningful links with their foster carers, everyone in their lives, people, maybe distant family, and that's very helpful. We had a positive focus visit for care leavers in December 2023. I advised you all about that, and that was really, exemplary. And they said that, the people in our care felt that we were, that they were a part of the Southwark family. I mean, that is, a real, well, what more could you say about the amazing frontline services that we have? Preschool meals. Do you know it was the 10th anniversary? We marked the 10th anniversary of preschool meals in this borough. And obviously we provide that to nurseries now. And we marked that by rolling that out for secondary school children in need. Okay, early intervention and prevention. not too much in the budget because we've done that before and we will be definitely doing it again. But Alistair and I came and we said that we were working on a transformation programme to deliver early intervention and prevention. We're making progress in children's centres through the Family Hubs programme. We recruited Best Start for Life workers who are delivering from our children and family centres. We have historically low numbers of children in care, which is part of the testament of our continuing support and investment of high quality early help and intervention services. And we're piloting Sure Start for teenagers now in the Brandon and Walworth and across the borough. I did want to blip over this, but Southwark Climate Schools, I mean, we know that climate is meant to touch on everything that we do, and obviously our services is no different. We've got all education on settings to have a sustainability lead in climate action by 2025. We've successfully engaged 24 schools so far, and we're drafting a climate action guide and we'll launch it in this autumn. Keeping education strong. Okay. I wanted to thank the Scrutiny really for their part in this. This is, a massive piece of work, and it was a strategy and plan to address falling numbers of primary school children, and it was agreed in 2022. A response to the demographic crisis based on dramatic fall in birth rates, 30% of families live in London, trends brought about by Brexit. You know the story. And primary schools in particular felt the financial brunt of this. We came out of this with being a beacon of local policy. Why? Because we co-produced between the council and school leaders, a plan to get ahead of this. So since 2021, 6 primary schools have closed, and there have been 21 published admission numbers reductions, removing, I think, 720 reception year places, the equivalent of 24 classes. So we've seen in other boroughs, and obviously, they're all my colleagues, so I'm not going to name and shame, but we've seen whereby, if you don't get ahead of this, then, it comes at you from every which way, and it's, even more stressful. So well done, to you and all our teams getting ahead of that. So Southwark Council's pupils' place planning will be in autumn, and we will look at the latest trends and intelligence of where we go from there. Adult education, we've got a new ambitious head of service. Our numbers of learners have increased. In 2022, it was below 30, and for 2023, it was 900, and for 2024, 465. So we're moving in the right direction there. I mean, we can have a debate, maybe we should have a debate about where's that going? Do we need less pottery? Do we need more? These are the kind of things that we talk about. We need, we've got so many refugees in the borough. We want to make sure that our, adult education is reflective and really helps people. I think we are getting there. Mental health. This is huge. That we were the first local authority to say we would support 100% of children and young people. We see, don't we, that children and young people in the UK, teenagers are facing a happiness recession, with 15-year-olds recording the lowest life satisfaction on average across 27 European nations. And that came out this week from the Good Childhood Inquiry. Here in Southwark, the provision of the nest continues to be in high demand. Now, I'm sorry, but I can't internalise information quickly enough, but what I am going to give you is the results. Rather than hack it on now, I will send to you, Chair, for your committee, the results of an evaluation of the nest, and it all looks very good. The thing is, that we are holding people as they wait for clinical support, and we have got cases where people don't need clinical support once they've had that kind of, had that support. In the last 12 months, our mental health in schools teams have delivered over 100 hours of consultation in schools. There is more detail there, so that is doing well. However, I want to go to the last bullet point, and I wanted to bring this to your attention, and that is the CAMHS waiting list. This is the last time these stats may have changed, but this is when I looked at it just before we all went underground, for the election. So those are the stats then, and I've no doubt Health will be, basically saying that they've changed. But, there's 44-week wait, and then for ADHD assessments, that's the highest. 122 children are, the last time I looked, on the assessment waiting list. Not good enough, is it? So one of the things that you might want to do, which would be helpful really, is to, just scrutinise those waiting lists really, and look at the NHS, look at us, and see what can be done, because we're putting all this energy, about saying we'll hold people while they wait, but then we, it basically falls short, doesn't it? They can't get access to that clinical support. Okay, special education needs and or disabilities. The national SEND system is broken. We all know that. I'm not breaking any secrets here. We've got a specialised assistant director who you're going to hear from later. I will not give any more compliments, because the worst thing you can do is add pressure before someone comes in front of scrutiny. But I will give you a flavour of some of the debates that we have. I mean, obviously, I represent you. I'm, the deputy leader, and I'm the, lead member. And some of the discussions that we have around here is that, like we did with mental health, we want we want a revolution, in special education needs and disabilities. You've heard me say that. And obviously, we have got, brilliant staff here who are very experienced, and they say, look, the system's broken. And so you end up in a bit of a discussion, and I hope I'm not caricaturing, and just as well I can't see the expressions behind me. But, the issue is that you might want to get into a situation whereby you under promise and over deliver, but there are issues with that, because you're not singing it from the rafters. Parents, I'm a parent, is that people might not know there's a sea change, but nevertheless, that's all academic, because we can see that we're hitting the ground running here, and we'll hear from parents later. But we've invested 700k in extra capacity to make the system better. Mike and Anna, and chaired by Alistair, we've got a strategic partnership attended by Nikki, who's also here tonight, and we're working through all the challenges of SEND, and there are many. So with 10,000 children and young people with special education needs and disabilities, 3,500 with EHCPs, this may have changed since the last time I looked before the election. We welcome the spotlight that you put on it, and anything that you can do for this committee that can add, will just mean that we come out stronger. Yes, it's about holding people to account, but it's also about raising that policy, because our children, my children, all our children, need this. Now, here's another bit that's exciting me really, and I've put school results and prospects. We've got 98% good and outstanding schools, hurrah. GCSE and A-level results book the inner London and national trend still. The first child, you've heard me say this before, you listen to me. We have the first child going to Oxford, who was, basically one of our children in care. A child whose special needs were so acute, they prevented him from going to secondary school, ended up at Oxbridge. I put that there. I can't remember which college he's gone to, but he's gone there to study engineering. I mean, this is all brilliant stuff, isn't it? But the post-pandemic issues, school exclusions, I'm sorry to say, are on the increase. I mean, basically, Clara and I were wading through the figures, because we always want to give you the most updated figure, because when you come here, there's always some smart aleck who tells you that figure's altered. But we want to say that on 2021, we had 13, 2022, 5, and now we've gone up to 27. When we put our spotlight on this, we had 49 children that were excluded. But underneath this, there are other stories, aren't there? There's managed moves, there's the isolation, and there's basically what's going on in schools. So there's a pronounced rise in school absences and post-pandemic, and the rates continue to be higher than pre-pandemic levels at 5.7%. But I can tell you that, Southwark are not as high as other local authorities. Nevertheless, we can take whole comfort from that, can't we? Because any children not doing well and not in school is not good. Okay, so resetting the relationship between council and schools. I feel that our team, and they can speak for themselves, are doing that. There has been a change. When all the head teachers get together, remember the famous inclusion charter? Basically by the time that we got that out, it went viral, and then head teachers were in, and then they were out. But now we can see that there's some really sensible work going on there. And I think basically one head teacher, our Saviour's Blushes, said that when all the head teachers get together, and then they might be talking about our services, which are heavily reliant on to get children included, that now, unlike last year, there's always one head teacher that will be vouching for the local authority. Well, we want to move that from one to all of them, really, don't we? We want to work together. But there is a sea change, isn't there? I mean, okay, I've been quite muted now, but now I'm going to give you the full enthusiasm now because, look, we've got regular meetings with council head teachers, and that will open it up for you guys as well. There'll be more opportunities for councillors to get involved. You're involved in your own schools, but you will get more involved. But we're also reviewing our alternative provision. So moving forward, so that 2030, that gives us real permission, doesn't it? Because we spoke to, basically we spoke to a lot of residents. 2,000 residents said, that children were the most important issue for them. And, all of the stuff that we want to do on mental health and SEND, it wasn't just that we were deciding in the loneliness of our own, in the town hall, what are the priorities. The parents were telling us the priorities, and in this area, at least, they mirrored what that parents were saying out there. So one of the things I wanted to say is there's a change of government, and we can see already, can't we? There's a child poverty task force which we will be giving evidence to. We've already got a lot from the work that Evelyn has done on public health, and we will add our bit to that. There's a sea change out with Tom Bennett. Do you remember Tom Bennett when I did the inclusion charter? And he's basically being moved from the DFE now. And so it's funny, ZARs, aren't they? Why do they call them ZARs? Because all ZARs come to sticky endings historically. And we can see that Tom Bennett has. I had a discussion with him on Radio 4. I feel that I finished him off then, but anyway, it takes a Labour government to do that. He said, the thing about inclusion is behaviour, behaviour, behaviour. Kevin Collins, the catch-up czar, he's in favour now, and he wants to do more work, understanding inclusion, thinks more like the people sat behind me. The Ofsted grades have been replaced by scorecards now. And I mean, it's interesting, really, isn't it? The government said that one word, doesn't sum it all up. And actually, by having a scorecard, it will enable parents to understand better what's going on in our schools. So I feel that's pretty exciting, and that will be helpful to Southwark. Early years expansion. I met the Minister for Early Education on Monday. We took him down to first place and showed him some of the work that we were doing, and he was talking to parents, and he understood the message. He said there's going to be 40,000 more workers in the early years sector. So it feels that all of the things, I mean, I haven't touched on nurseries, but I feel that you're well rehearsed on that. But it feels like things are opening up. And he also said, in some of the schools that we have, many, that we can use those empty classrooms, in those schools for expanded nursery provision. So, it's all looking good. There's a slide there that looks at the feedback on Southwark 2030. So that draws a line on the children and families. I did want to now, and I'm nearly there, Chair, look at refugees. I think those are some of the stats. I won't repeat them. As you can see, there's been a lot of work going on in Southwark. Do you know that we're the third highest number of refugees in London? And that's saying something, really, because we're fairly central, aren't we? And the highest is Hillingdon and Hounslow, which feel like, they're direct influx, where people come in. So the Borough Sanctuary Framework, here's a headline for you. We finally got Borough Sanctuary status. It's not that we were late coming because we've been doing the work, but we managed to have time to do the interview, and that went really, really well. Everyone was really impressed by our joint strategic needs assessment for asylum seekers and refugees, which has been an exemplar around the country. We're the first local authority to have sanctuary status for our libraries, and our public affairs plan in working with government to actually, see what we can do to better support refugees and asylum seekers. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're a predominantly Labour council, but we're going to do the best for our residents. And, one of the things that I did do is I wrote to Yvette Cooper saying, some of the things that were happening here, inviting her here. But I think of, many of the areas, if you've got the third largest, highest population of refugees, this gives you license to give a little bit of push back and really improve things, you know, for refugees and asylum seekers. So going forward, I think this is my last slide. We're going to radically improve SEND. Delete the word revolution and insert radically improve, because we are radically improving it. We're going to develop a stronger partnership with schools to better support vulnerable pupils. We've got evidence for the Child Poverty Commission based on all the amazing work that's going in Southwark, feeding hungry children, you know, basically all the work that has been done, you know, on the cost of living crisis. And we're looking at keeping education strong in the context of the incoming public place pupil place planning report in October. And we're going to roll out the Borough Sanctuary Framework with partners. We're going to have a massive celebration event, and all you guys are invited to that. And then we've got a public affairs plan, which I mentioned, which will enable us to work with government to really, you know, improve the way, you know, we support asylum seeking people and refugees in this country. Okay, that's it really.
Thanks very much, Councillor Ali. Really great to hear some of the highlights and also what you've got planned. So when we brought you here at the start of the year rather than the end, we very much wanted to look at some pre-scrutiny and where we might be able to reflect on that. And perhaps we'll bring you back later in the year to do a report on that. But yeah, really helpful. I will throw it out to members if there are any questions. Okay.
What you preparing, which I know we're very proud of this in annual. I'll circulate that for you, the updates and exclusions, and also bring you the valuation of the net.
Yes, perfect. How very kind. Thank you. Hey, yes.
The planning report out. Will you be looking at foreclosures on the back of that? Further reductions in that report, will that lead to like a new range of amalgamating or shutting? How's that going to?
Sorry, I'm sure you want to take them back.
I'm happy to answer.
Oh, right, okay. Yes, well, we're looking at that now. We're doing all the number crunching. One thing that I can say, and that's what quite positively, is that we did get in front of it with keeping education strong. We've managed to take 24 classes out. So, you know, we're feeling that there's room in the system. So we're looking at that now. I mean, I don't really want that to be the headline of this, but I'm feeling quite, you know, positive that we've managed to get in front of it. But we're looking at those numbers now. We're working with the schools, and you know, we're looking at, you know, obviously there's more to do than closure. That's quite an egregious thing to do. But obviously there's always reduction of pupil, you know, the pupil admission numbers. So I should think that we'd be definitely in that territory. You know, how far we will go, I'm not certain yet. But having said that, I feel that the pain that we had with keeping education strong more positively has put us in a much better position than we would have, in the best position than we would have. Local authority, so I'm not dreading.
Thank you. I have 3 questions, 2 may be small, and may have just been me not understanding. Did you say that exclusions for 2022-23 were 27, but 49 for this year?
No, I'm so sorry. I was basically, when we started all our focus, Rachel, I don't think you were here then, but basically, when I became a councillor, on the cabinet, 2018, we had 49 school exclusions, and obviously that was like mirrored around the country, and that was quite high. And in fact, when I went on the radio, Tom Bennett was like, "You weren't even an outlier." Do you know what I mean? That was a relatively small number, but obviously, you know, for Southwark, that was just 49 too many. So that's when we got really good at getting in front of it. And then, of course, you had the pandemic, you had all of this, and now we could see it creeping up, and we're heading it off at the path, really.
Okay, so the 49 is an old number, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. And then in terms of adult education as well, you were was it 900 last year and 465 this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the last one, just for my own education, what does it mean for libraries to have sanctuary status? What does that mean?
It's just all the work they do with scientific.
So it means that they're a place that people should be able to go to get information. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just amazing that we're the person. So, thank you. Thank you for your question.
Yusuf?
Hi, thanks for your presentation, and great and coming ahead. Just a couple of questions around school absences and inclusions increasing. Has there been any kind of like root cause analysis as to kind of why that's happening, and what's the plans to reduce it? And in terms of adult skills, has there been any thinking around being kind of a bit like this may well happen, being strategic about it, just in terms of upskilling people for skills that like Southwark and London need? So obviously there's certain industries that are kind of need people, whether that's catering or construction or whatever it may be, and matching those adult skills to kind of what the labour market needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Brilliant questions. Thank you. The root causes of this, it's not just in Southwark, and obviously, we could say in Southwark, because of all the brilliant work that we do and the work that we've done, raising attainment for children with disadvantaged background, we're in a good place. But actually, it's a national phenomenon. And we can see that the root cause, there are many root causes, poverty being the absolute key one, but it's not the only one. It's not just exclusive to children that are in poverty, but that doesn't help. But also, and it's a main driver, but also, and obviously we've seen with the cost of living crisis and everything that embitter, it affects us all. But imagine, if basically you're in a precarious position. So the other thing is the lockdowns and the pandemic, and then we talk about special education needs, I'm sure it'll come out later, but it kind of really bears down, like everything, when you have like a mass phenomenon like that, it bears down on the most vulnerable, so it's not just about poverty then, it's even wider, it can be children in care, special education needs. I mean, we have this thing, like basically with, and I have to be careful, because I know I've got the expert parents, well, I'm a parent too, is that you saw this kind of thing coming where special education needs, neurodiversity became synonymous with mental health needs. One could almost say there's a link there anyway, but it was like basically pretty toxic, really. So all of these trends are happening as a result of this global pandemic. And then you end up with having children who are just, they can't face school, and then obviously you have the machine, which is all about behaviorism. When you're in school, you've got to behave this way. And then when you're not in school, you've got to get into school. And then when you're in school, you might be like a square peg in a round hole, with the behaviorism, that bearing down. So all of these at play. And so, you have to say that basically that is, brought about by a number of objective situations. And that means, I would say, Southwark, we all have to do better. But having said that, we are in a very good position. We have a good team, we have great schools, but we're not perfect. But we need to be perfect, don't we? Because for only, one child suffering, that's one child too much. And it's at the crux, this is at the crux, really, of the SEN crisis, which is why we need you to help scrutinise it too. Oh, there was the other question about adult skilling. Well, you hit the nail on the head there. Yes, it's a journey, and we are doing that. We're doing our best. I sit on the board of Southwark College, and I sit on the board of adult education. It's come, leaps and bounds, really. You could see those stats, but there's still more to do, because we've got the local economy team who are like leaders in London, on the, the apprenticeships and everything. John, that you're a big part of that. And then, basically it's like how you have the pottery and the stuff and the life enhancing stuff to the life improving things, that get to the crux of it and the skills agenda. So we are doing that, but we are, watch this space. We need to accelerate it, and it's a journey. Luckily, we've got the numbers to support that going in the right direction. But thank you very much.
Jasmine. I've got 3 more people who said they want to speak and ask a question, and we've got around 10 minutes left in this agenda item. And Renato, who've got 4. So I'll take these questions in perhaps 2 batches, and hopefully we can cover the time that we've got. So I've got Councillor Von Beeds next.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick. The first one was around CAMS waiting list for mental health assessment, which is still worrying. Is there something that you plan to do in conjunction with the NHS? In my experience, it's often a problem that you have nest and you have the therapist workers at the schools, but in many cases, what it really needs is an assessment by a psychiatrist rather than a psychologist. And how does that work together? What is the coordination like with the NHS? I'm very glad you mentioned neurodiversity, because I have a lot of residents who are asking for things like safe spaces. So the other question is, will, the council, but also the new government, translate all these fabulous new task forces and STARS into hopefully greater funding for local authorities, and specifically for the provision of these spaces for neurodiverse children? And then just very briefly, I'm really, really happy about the borough sanctuary. Thank you for making that happen. What does that mean, however, in practice? For example, will you be lobbying the new government to allow asylum seekers work earlier than they can do at present? I know that there's been an ask from the Labour Party as well as the Liberal Democrats. So is that going to happen? Are you aware of any plans to do? Thank you.
Yep, great. Not unchallenging questions there. Okay, the CAMS waiting list. This is, there are a number of things that keep people up at night. I've had experience of this as well. Let's start with what's positive in Southwark, because we have got good relationships with the NHS. We can always be a bit flippant, and if I'm having a bad day, I might say the EHCP. What we need with the EHCP is a capital H. I'm doing my bit, we're doing our bit. Where's help? But that is a bit flippant, because I think we're working hard together. We've got these new I can't even say it now, can I? I'm being recorded, but we've got these. We've got these new structures that we're working towards, which will make better integration of health and social care. So that is an opportunity. We've got we've got Evelyn, in the middle of the health and wellbeing board, chairing that. So that is, very good. Partnership Southwark. So we've got all of these things that are lining up, but don't we? We still need the stars and the moon, whatever the phrase is, to align to see that gear change. I think we're in a good position to get there. We've also, for me, it's interesting because I've got CAMS in my relations with CAMS, which is why I did the 100% mental health. When NHS said 35%, I said we're going to do 100%. And I've got that, and I've got special education needs, and I've got a direct reporting line now, because we've got a new person, Darren, who's basically sits on, he sits on the chief officer's structure, and he basically has 1 foot in health and 1 foot in social care. He's just started now. He looks reasonably relaxed, but let's hope he's here in a year's time. But basically, if he sticks it out and he can bring these things together, it will be good. I had a discussion with him, and I was like, did my usual thing, outrageous of Southwark about the clinical support and everything, and he kind of matched it really. Like me, he's a parent and he's really committed to it. So I think we might be moving in the right direction, which would be good. But having said that, said the positive, there's still more to do, which is why I put my stats there. And I think, if you've got time, you could interrogate those statistics really, because it hits on the send agenda if you've got time. And I think it would really add value at a time when we're raising our game. Scrutiny always plays a good part when it's like basically improving policy as well. So, more to do. Sorry, I did that political thing where I pushed it back on you, but I think if you can help, that would be good. So, but I'm quite positive of the direction. On the neurodiversity, it's interesting really. You mentioned money. And I think, yes, of course, we need money to improve things. But I think in the SEND space, and I'm sure I might be contradicted when the SEND panel come up, but you don't always need money on this agenda, because if you look at the SEND system, it's so broken, and you look at the structure. I told you, I met someone from the Disability Council who was talking to the good and the great, and she was like, basically, I just happened to be in the audience because it was an LGA conference, and she said, in order to I've told you before, in order to understand the SEND system now, one would have to be on mind-altering drugs. You don't expect to hear that, do you, in a highbrow you know, and she wasn't giving them out either. She did want to change things. She then put a slide up. Yeah, exactly. Although by the time I finish with you, you might feel like you need some. But I think basically, they put under the slide up, and it was obvious to me, you know, and that you didn't need to do much in order to improve things. Actually, if you start by putting parents like me and Nikki and families in the middle, you just might be able to improve things without spending like massive amounts of money. But obviously, you know, that's, you know, been my experience. On the Borough of Sanctuary, yes and yes. As I said in my introduction, because I had a feeling someone might ask that question, when you've got the third highest amount of refugees, you know, it's incumbent, isn't it? No matter who's in government, you have to, and it's expected that you raise all the issues. And of course, employment is a key one. So, you know, we will be doing that. I've already written to, you know, basically the Secretary of State, inviting her to come and see the amazing work that Stephen and his team do, but also some pointers of where we might improve things.
Thanks, Jasmine.
So kind of demonstrate.
I will ask members to keep the last three questions as brief as possible. Likewise, the answers, and I will actually this time take them in a batch so that you can try and summarise if that's okay. So next on the list, I've got Councillor Chopra.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for your presentation. Just for my own knowledge, I would like to know, you mentioned about lifelong links program. It will be nice to know if you can elaborate a little bit more what it is, because it's a very nice, fancy word, but I don't know what it is, for my knowledge. And secondly, you mentioned you invested 700K into special education need. So for my own knowledge, I would like to know, did we invest into IT? Did we invest into staff? Did we invest into AI? So, or staff training? And my last question is, 6 primary school has been closed in Southwark. Did we provided jobs to those unemployed people into any other schools, or what happened to them? Because loads and loads of people been unemployed. So nice to know what happened to those.
Thanks, Sunil.
Thank you.
I will just take those. You might end up with 9 in this batch. Hopefully not. Councillor Hartley.
Right, I've got 2 left as well. You mentioned the wider Borough of Sanctuary process, but you mentioned within your presentation that this year we're looking to expand it to involve. Can you tell us which partners are coming, what the process is to expand that? And then just digging into, yes, I thought you, just to dig into exclusions and absences again. Obviously 22-23 is not the last year we've had. Do we have an indication of how things have gone in the last year? And do we have a projection for how we expect things to go? Because when we get to that point where larger numbers of children are being excluded, it's the worst possible outcome.
Thanks, John. And then lastly, Councillor Hambers.
Thanks, Jasmine. It was a very good presentation. I am quite concerned, having been on the Scrutiny Commission and come off it and then come back on it, because I was on it when we were looking at exclusions, and the aim was to stamp out exclusions. So I'm very concerned to see that not only have we still got exclusions, but the numbers increased quite dramatically. And I'm just wondering, has there been any analysis as to why we're having those exclusions? Is it particular schools? Is it particular reasons? Is there any specific demographics to the children to try and reduce the numbers back again? You know, and stamp it out and put these. I'm just wondering if you have any insight to this.
At the end, okay. So basically, we'll start with Councillor Chopra. I think really the Lifelong Links programme, it's basically about, you know, we got funding so that we could help children, support children building their networks. Quite often, when you speak to children and young people in your care, they want to have contact with family, and the process of care. Sometimes, you know, you might not be able to see your family, or you lose those links. Plus, you may have had a foster carer, then moved on to another foster carer, and you've got all these links. And Lifelong Links is about basically having opportunity in the spotlight and the time and the energy to enable that child to rebuild those links, really. So it's, you know, very incredibly positive. So that is on that. And then the other question was on, what was the other question? Oh, the 700K. That's a lovely segue question. I think I'll leave that for the SEND people who are coming up, because I'll be able to articulate.
Make a note.
Just, I mean, the overall question is it's helping us fix, you know, the SEND in Southwark, really enabling us what the blockers are and everything, but they'll explain exactly what is being spent on when they come up. And your last question, sorry. Oh, yes, as part and parcel of keeping education strong, there was work with the families in order to get people to neighbouring good and outstanding schools, and also working with staff to make sure they had the support, really. So yes, you know, there was a lot of support in that work. Okay, and then the next questions were your questions about John, the wider borough sanctuary work. That is all based. You can't get borough sanctuary, so that's probably my sloppy way of introducing it. You can't get that unless you're hand in glove with your voluntary sector. You have to be working together, you know, to make sure that you meet the needs of refugees and asylum seekers. You're not, you know, quite often voluntary sector councils and all these partners, you know, you can have so much help that they can work against one another, but you work in hand in glove. It's like really canny, and it brings that together. Not that we don't work well with our partners, but, you know, it's really helped build our relationship, the whole process. And, you know, the partners are, they're basically outlined in, I was going to bring my forward for you for the cabinet report. I love that. But the partners are Community Southwark. They're basically the Southwark Day Centre for Asylum Seekers and Law Centre. You know, there's the Afghanistan. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So they're all, you know, there are many more, but they're the ones that like stuck with us and, you know, wrote us letters on behalf of people on a Friday night, and we answered them on Friday night with that crisis. And that through that struggle, we ended up really getting it right. And in fact, we did the forward for the Borough of Sanctuary, and LTAD said, you know, I'm really behind the vision of the council. It's like, no, it's our vision. And he said, yes, you know, because he's done as much work, probably more than anybody on it. On the exclusions, I think, I mean, basically, we could end up having a debate, which would be interesting, but it wouldn't be good in time. I suspect it will get higher. And if it's not getting higher, there'll be stuff around suspensions and what's going on in schools. You know, I'm characteristically pessimistic about this, but in a way that we will get in front of it. And that hits on, you know, your question, really. What happened? You know, we went from 49, we launched that inclusion charter, we geared the council and the head teacher. Oh, you know, I was in a bunker with a lot of those head teachers, hammering out this inclusion charter. And then when it hit, it was like, you know, immeasurably progressive. It went viral. But, I mean, basically, the thing that we are doing, and I will end up on a positive note, is that we put, you know, we've got the DCS, Alistair, you know, to say, basically, he was going to be looking at education and, you know, the core services like early help, like safeguarding, you know, all that the SEND services and you know, mental health service, or the segue into NHS, and basically looking at all those services so that we can work hand in glove to make sure that we really support. And like any revolution, well, I won't mention any massive change program, there's some disruption. We've got some disruption. What is about? It's not about that we're doing anything wrong. It's about those issues around the pandemic, the living prices, which have bore down on the families, bore down on our and our children's mental health, and education as well for those issues. All right, we're definitely on it.
Jasmine, and a lot of meaty topics there that we could have gone into a lot more detail around, particularly that last one. And actually, I think it could be quite useful to have a report, inclusion charter and the impact. And yeah,
I think, Chair, in a way, the inclusion charter was a part of the historical move, but I think we've kind of gone past that now, and I think it would be good to just look at that work. Well, just evaluate it where it is, look at the numbers, and look at what's going on in schools. And I think on a positive level, the fact that we've got a different way of measuring schools and everything, I think that we are going to see a step change, and that we will do right by all our children. Really.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Jasmine. Thanks everyone for your questions. Okay, well, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is Nikki Rolfram, chair of the Parent Carer Forum, to talk about SEND and how their members are impacted by issues faced by those with SEND children. Is Nikki here? Hi. Welcome. Would you like to come up onto the panel? And if anybody else is joining you, then please do bring them.
It's like my
Oh,
I come somewhere I don't know if my left guys got these sorry.
it's nice to have a comfort blanket.
I think it,
Yeah. I wish I brought mine.
It's lovely.
Well, it's great to meet you. Thanks for coming. Got it. Thank you. Well, we invited you here tonight. It's probably quite obvious, really, after Jasmine's presentation around some of the issues that SEND children and families with SEND children face in Southwark and all over the country. So really interested to hear from you tonight in terms of your experience of that, how Southwark can improve its services, and what else needs to improve more nationally. So, yeah. Please introduce yourselves and go for it.
I thought I'm born and bred.
Nikki, sorry, if you could just turn on your microphone. Thank you.
Never heard that. If I talk too fast, please tell me, because when I get anxious, I talk fast.
Sure. You're all good for now.
So I was born and bred Bermondsey, and I actually used to be a foster carer for Westminster. And my youngest son, who's now 21, is got special needs. I adopted him. He was born addicted to drugs, and you could see he was going to stay in the system. And it's been the hardest and the best thing I've ever done. When we started our journey all them years ago, there was nothing. He wasn't autistic, even though he was born addicted to drugs. There was mental health on both sides of the families, because he could give eye contact and didn't pick. That still happens today in schools, which I find really sad. He's actually just starting his 12th education setting. So we talk about exclusions and inclusions. We've been around the block. Lovely Lloyd came here when he was about 10, my son, and they've been my lifeline. They really are the safety net, because some of us fall through it. That is the thing. It isn't a blanket, what you hear. And I think it's great for those that get that support. But the ones that don't, they deserve our help just as much. And, it actually quite often, more profound ones can actually sometimes be easier. When you've got really abled, high functioning ones, you don't see what, on the surface, they look fine, they mask. But they're the ones that quite often you are going to get the really bad mental health. They are getting it. We've got self-harming, we've got eating disorders and all that. And all the time this is going on, there's no help. But anyway, my journey went like that, and I just knew people, other parents, and got the information to them. And then I was actually asked to do the forum, and I really didn't want to do it, if I'm honest. But no one else would step up to it. But I'm going to be honest, I don't care what they do nationally, the forums, and I don't care what they do regionally. I care about Southwark. And all of my committees are the same. There's 11 of us, and we all have kids in the borough, and we all feel the same. we care about where our kids are and where we live, and we love Southwark. To be honest with you, we all love it, and you know, none of us want to move. We've always had a good relationship with the SEND team and that, but I'm going to be honest, since Anna's come in, nothing, no sort of anything to say to anyone else, but she's been a fresh air. You know, when like you can see change, and it's really nice because I think they then get other people excited. And on the strategic panel that Ali's doing and all that's on, and got everyone here that's on it, I can actually see mind ticking. I know it sounds weird, you know, because everyone's getting excited on. Yeah, it's not great, but it's getting better, and it really is. It was interesting talking to Lloyd and Anna recently, and we're classed as being told that the forum has to work in co-production or in partnership. I don't like to use them terms because what we actually are is a team, and we are all equal within that team. And as much as we need professionals, because we couldn't be without you, the parents are professionals when it comes to the kids. We talk about, it's interesting about the exclusion. I've got a really good example, I think, on why. And it's another foster carer who adopted her daughter. And she last year went to year 7 in a mainstream secondary school, doesn't matter which one, hasn't been diagnosed. You can tell she's got needs. She's been excluded so many times. Because even though she hasn't got a diagnosis, there's history there. You know that, you know, there's a background there. But because she didn't comply with mainstream secondary school rules, if you like, and didn't have the social skills, she just kept getting excluded. So I referred her to SIAS, and as a parent, I was like, you know, you don't. I say to parents, if you're really frustrated, you will come across as angry, and then you become the enemy. I know it's awful, but this is the reality in schools. It very quickly becomes them and us, because the schools feel we're trying to tell them what to do. We're not actually. We're actually really scared, you know. And for me, this is a really good example. Your kid's getting excluded, or temporarily excluded. It's not able to comply because it's not getting its needs not met, not even understood properly. And then you'll take them into school. You're a single parent. You've got 3 kids. 2's got needs. You're all on your own. You've got them into school on time, and then within 15 minutes, you've got a phone call. We can't have them here today. You need to come and get them. And it's like you've got an entire building dedicated to educating. You've got staff. You've got equipment. You've got specialists, and yet you can't cope within 20 minutes, but you expect a simple parent to come and do that all on their own. Where's the fairness in that? I don't think there's enough money in the education system, and I don't think it's. I don't think there's enough knowledge, if I'm honest. We've still got. This is how bad it is. I'll tell you how it is. We've got some really good schools that work good with SEND kids. Problem is, when you talk to them schools, they're oversubscribed. So now you've got a problem where you've got all these SEND kids in a mainstream, which is then sort of encroaching on those without needs. That makes sense. Because it will go by words or math. I think it needs to be more consistent. It needs to be across the board. And how can we, but Anna and that, all the team are, Alice, that are working towards what can we do better. I think for us, the biggest problem is health. Because they are really hard to get hold of. And, you know, I know, sorry, the husband was saying about the H&E, HCP. Well, it's there for a reason. They've got a place for it. They should be at the table and they're not. When you go on the CAMS waiting list, so what will happen is you'll go to school, early years are amazing. Not everyone, not every child is noticeable early, but you'll go in and then eventually they say, oh yeah, needs to go, be referred, you go on the waiting list. Nothing's being done for that family during that time. And I've said this at meetings before, speech and language, EPs, like, you know, all that you do to work with the kids, I don't drop my child off at 9 o'clock and suddenly he's got special needs. And he's in a building with all people who can deal with special needs, and then at 3:30, I'll leave his special needs behind. So as much as you've got the schools knowing, health needs to be training the parents. And I think it's really sad that this November, we do workshops. All of what we do is voluntary from the forum, and we really believe in empowering parents because knowledge, we believe information is knowledge, knowledge is power, power gives empowerment to go in and get up every day and just do the day as you have to. But in November, we've actually got someone coming in from health to explain to our parents what certain diagnoses mean, because they haven't ever been told. If they've got, we had global learning development today. Well, what does that mean? This child's in they're just one, they're in special needs settings in this borough. And what's interesting is, some have got autism, suddenly they'll talk about autism, they go, oh yeah, no, Mars got dyslexia. And not know, and I think that's really sad. And that's coming from health. You go in the waiting line to be assessed at CAMS. When you start off, your child will be wobbling. By the time you get through that list, unless you've got a really good school, you've got early years, if you're lucky ones and all that, they're going to be a hell of a lot worse till they get there, if that makes sense. So what starts off as a problem, a little problem, or just needs a little bit of help, can really, really expand. So then you've got schools saying, we just haven't got the money to do it. We haven't got the staff to do it. We can't get this. We can't get that. And the same, and then you get your diagnosis, you're getting a basic bit of information on your child's needs, and you're dismissed. But then when you come back, things like the mental health, and you have to tap back in, again, you've got to wait. And my argument is, why aren't you teaching parents how to manage these children with this mental health? My son likes blood. That's how bad it is. My son will get anything done, make it sharp. He will stick it up his nose. He will stick it down his fingernails, inside his penis. He will scrape and scrape and scrape. And he scrapes off his hands and collects it sounds really crazy, but collects the bits of skin in a box. And I go, oh, yeah, that's all right, because that's the only thing I know in his life that he feels he can control. And that's really, but my son ain't on his own. And it's like, what do you do with these children and young people that have got the mental health? And we know that society's got problems as it is, because by the time they get help, it's really, really hard to get them back on track. There's just been too much damage, if that makes sense. My son, because it hasn't worked, I was quite bold, and thanks to Lloyd, I went and done personal budget. When he was in year 8, he'd come out, I went, I'm not doing this no more. He'd already had like 6 placements. So I'd done a personal budget at the library for 3 years, and it was the best thing I ever done, because it gave him time to heal, if that makes sense. And he didn't have all that chaos. We've gone back to school, went really well. College again, was it main cap just broke down. We've gone back to personal budget again. Now, for me, my son with his mental health now is, I've literally got to try and get him out my street door. And I'm not on my own. You talk about school refusers, they don't refuse. They just can't cope. And it is, again, it's, for me, more money needs to go into it to educate everyone on what that really means. What is autism? Because I get that all the time, and our group, we go to, well, that's just one person. And what we like to do is, as a forum, when they've got a piece of work, we get a focus group together. Rather than just have, in the past, like you've been on a committee, you'll get on loads of them, and there'll be one person, me, another parent. We like to do a focus group so we can get different parents all the time. So you get different ages, different diagnoses, different stages in life, so that you get a real good picture of what is happening out there. And that happened recently. They've done Southwark done a speech and language piece of work. And we've done a focus group, and they said it was amazing. They really, although we had 17 parents, they got 17 different views, if that makes sense. So they could get a really good whole picture. And that way, you've actually got something to work with, rather than just 1 or 2 people.
I'm going to give you a 2-minute warning if there's
No,
anything
that's
else you'd
fine.
like to say. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. Thank you for the work that you do on the Parents and Carers Forum as well. Some incredible stories that you've just shared. And it just reminds me how important this topic is for the Commission to look at this year. I have a ton of questions, but I will withhold them for now. I've got Councillor Von Bees with her hand up. Anybody else who knows they want to speak now? No? All right. Well, yeah, you can start.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much. I think that was the single most helpful information in a short period of time that I've had as a councillor. It's given me an overview. That's been just really, really helpful. Thank you so much for that. And it also reflects, sadly, my own experience as a parent in my daughter's former school with children who had mental health issues. And you're absolutely right. It's just not good enough. And I really like your idea to empower the parents. So my question is, apart from money, which is sorely lacking, and I think we're all aware of that, and we've that earlier. But But apart from that, what can we do as councillors and as a council, if you had a wish list to change things, and if we had a small budget, what could we do to help you and your son and the parents?
We had this conversation recently, I did with parents, and we all said the same. The mad thing is that the greatest group of people you would get that won't cost you any money are parents. And they will be the ones that would sit there and do their own work, do the work and put the effort in because they're doing it for their child and someone else. So I suppose for us as parents, we always say that there needs to be more. Parents are overlooked. The reality is they're overlooked. Because you know, what are they doing in school? What are they doing in social care? And the parents have got them 24/7, you know. And it's, I think, train parents more. Use the people you've got. You've got the profession, whether it's education, health, or social care. Stay in that. With Anna now, and in Banster with the strategic, we're going towards that. That is what we're doing there anyway. And for the first time, I've seen that actually, we're actually, like I say, we're a team. Before it was co-production. And I think if you've got the staff, you've got the knowledge, spread it, but also you need to go somehow. You need to get into the schools because it really isn't. I don't know why it isn't a blanket. It's not a really good school. I mean, a really good example is we've really done good things with short breaks. We've really changed it up, and it went out to all the schools to tell the parents, and only a handful actually even pass that email on. So what do you do when they're not doing it? I don't know. I'm honest, but for me, about money, you need to come together. And what knowledge can we share? Health is a really big issue at the moment. They are the ones that are not in the. They're not in the group. They're not in the game. Sorry, they've got their own game going on over there, and it really is awful that it's we don't. And they will say to, don't deal with that. You know, we do it for the school, and it's not. It's everyday life, to be honest with you. And the schools need to know what the parents are like, and the parents need to know, you know, and it needs to be run together for me. It is more about a little bit of money, but get your knowledge together and strategically use it like you're going into a battle, I suppose, and share it. Because it also, early years is amazing, but I say this all the time. A lot of kids don't know straight away. So if you don't just like, even with it's happening today, the one I was telling you about earlier. You know, there's quite a lot there, age 9, 10, 11, 12, that are getting diagnosed. So all that help, they can't have. Because you can't have, there's nothing there for early years for the teenagers. That makes sense. And it doesn't just happen early, you know. And if you all think back to when we was, I mean, God, look at me, I'm 57, I've just been diagnosed. You know, I knew I was ADHD. But I didn't. It's come to surprise autism, if I'm honest. But I'm working on that. And I've looked back on my life actually, and even if I'd had it on my son, what he was when he was under 5, what he was primary, yourselves, what was you like at teenagers? You know, you imagine all that change, and you've got needs, and then suddenly you've got to go out into the workplace. I think you just need to pull together and not have it. We do this here, that there, that there. You need to have it flowing when it's needed, but you need schools on board. I think that is your biggest barrier. I'm not putting schools down. There's some amazing schools, and a lot of them they just don't know, and they haven't got the money to do the training. I don't know why schools have to pay out of their budget to be trained on needs. If you're sending your kids, for me, if you're sending kids there, why do they have to use their own budget? And that's how we all think the same on that for them. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Councillor Chopra.
Thank you very much. It's very touchy what you're saying because I had a personal experience because my nephew suffered with autism, so we can understand the stress on the parents. But from your views or from my thinking, it seems to me that there should be one dedicated teacher in a school who should have a little bit extra training about those issues. So which will not cost too much money, but it can help parents and the teacher and everybody in the school. Do you think that is the right approach? Just for my knowledge.
Yeah, do you know what? So it's interesting, everyone, because at the moment it's all the Senko knows, but in some schools, Senko isn't even a dedicated Senko. They teach in class as well, which is ridiculous, sorry. But so when I was in, I went back to work at last sadly because of my dad died, but Reese's placement broke down, so I had to give up. But I actually went as a family support worker in one of the secondary schools. And you know, I had one of the parents ring me today, and I'm like, I can't like to leave that place. And because I was a parent, the difference that made, not just for the parents, but for the school. You know, and I say, and so I think every school should have, I think they would all benefit from that. I really do. I think that's a really good point, actually. I don't know why all schools, 10 schools seem to have them, but they don't do it in mainstream. Or if they do in mainstream, it's interesting. The person who's got my job, she's amazing. She's a social worker. Now, if you've had a child with needs, my son's never been able to have social care. He's never had social care involved because I'll cope. Some do, and it's not, you know, because they're having difficulty parenting. So to have a person in that role, straight away, you've got a barrier. Because they'll remember you. It's a bit like if you've been to prison, suddenly, you know, your policeman, you know, your mentor. It's not always, but yeah, I think I think that could go a long way. Or even have a pool that could go round when need be. And so it was really good years ago. My Reese ended up at the National Specialist at Michael Rutter. Amazing getting diagnosed there because you have the cameras, 3 doctors behind the glass, mirrored screen. And he was in one special needs school, which was the best school he ever went to. But when he first went there, I was like, yeah. So I had to ask the professor there to come in. And I was like, come on, I need you. But he came in. And the school was that impressed, they actually used their funding to get them back to teach the whole school, including the caretaker, on autism, because it was a whole new different light that they'd seen and how it like coexists with ADHD and mental health and you know it. Why they done it because they're a very good school actually, just got outstanding because they knew it was an investment. But there's lots of schools won't pay it, and it shouldn't be that your child's going to get that better support because that school's willing to shuffle their money around. It needs to be somehow. Of course, it might be that every school's got someone, or there's a pool that can visit each school.
Right. And one thing I heard loud and clear from you, Nikki, is that health is one of the key issues. I heard you say that it's hard to get them around the table, hard to get a hold of. What do you actually mean by that, and who exactly are you referring to?
Well, the main one's a Sunshine Hat, if I'm honest. But it's interesting. Let's start from speech and language, because that can come on that, I suppose. They're really great done. But when we've done the thing on speech and language, we all sat down and I was like, can I just ask, does anyone actually know what speech and language means? Yeah, you learn to talk. And I went to a strategic meeting, and actually that was really good. And it was, I wanted to get them a log actually to the parents, because what they actually, it's about communicating. It's about interactions. It's all the things that I struggle with most of the time. It's, you know, but again, they go into the school because that's it. You never ever get it unless you're under 5, and what, you know, you don't get it. And most of them go to Sunshine House, if I'm honest. And the Sunshine House is an amazing place, but you go there, you get your treatment, or whatever, you get diagnosed, you come away, and then that's it. You don't go back anymore. Unless you've got a physical health problem, they might come along. But if you haven't, then they never get involved. And I mean, my son's 21 now, but I can remember we used to go there a lot because of his medication, but also because of his mental health. And then it was like, and it was during lockdown, it's like, it's going to be 18, so I have no more. And you literally get cut off, you know, and you literally fall off a cliff. And it's right at the time, when you think about it, if your kid's in special needs school, it will stay till they're 19 in school and then they have to leave. And it's really a pivotal time. You're 18, you're now an adult, even though mostly you're 6. Your education, you might be 5. You're now 18 and you're going into a college or wherever. That now you're a grown up. And the time when there's going to be so much pressure to be different, you've got no help. And you will not get back onto the list unless you're in crisis. I know parents that have gone to A&E. You have to do it through A&E. And I'm not out and there's a lot, they're getting sectioned. And it's like, I don't think you can't drop them off. You know, if you've had someone come in for 5 years regularly and you know that they're having problems, they don't automatically go over unless they happen to be having therapy at that particular time. Sorry, but
No, don't apologise.
yeah.
It's really helpful.
Yeah, I like Sunshine House. It does great things, but it's just not enough. It feels like it's disaster.
Mm.
I mean, it's the bit I'm going to stand really cruelly. So my dad had cancer. When he got diagnosed with brain cancer, the doctor really explained in detail what it was. There was Macmillan nurses that we could call. There was a cancer unit that we could call because, you know, you learn as you go along. When you go to Sunshine House, you get a diagnosis. That's it. Go on the internet. We don't know what we need from Google or NAS, or we tell each other, and it shouldn't be like that with health. This is a lifelong disability. You know, it doesn't change. And if anything, my son's is getting worse because he ain't in school for much longer, and he's 25, he can't get a job, and then it all falls back onto the parent. You just become a babysitter again.
Such a helpful analogy. Thank you. We're going to take one more question before we close this item, and that's Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Nikki, and I completely agree with what my colleagues have said. And like the chair, I was very struck by your point around health, and I think that diagnosis, and like you say, if I went to the, I don't know, if I had a cancer diagnosis, I would expect an ongoing care plan. And I was thinking about that, where you have had diagnosis and parents have had similar ones, has there been any kind of discussion of things being severe, mild, moderate? Because I think right at the start you said that some of the children that you worry about the most are the ones who are kind of on the borderline. And I say, I'm not really sure what my question is, but I just wanted to get your perspective on that. I would say of any kind of understanding, because like you said with your son, you feel that he's getting worse. So whereas when he was originally diagnosed, maybe it was at a certain level, but now you're feeling it's getting more severe.
Yeah, it's so. My son was actually diagnosed with functioning autism, and that's actually basically because of his academic ability. My son's a genius. No one taught him to read, you know, and he's mathematical genius, but he's patchy. But because they can cope, kind of, if you like, to go for academically wise, no one. I know it sounds awful, especially in the mainstream. You're ticking their box. And that's what the box is about, isn't it? Let's sit at GCSE, let's do this, let's do that. But actually, and the pressure is on them because they're such perfectionists, a lot of them, or, you know, they do struggle with it. When it comes to the exams, a lot of them can't do it. And they fail so badly that they don't ever want to go on to college. And actually, it's interesting. So you talk about reasonable adjustments. And I had that. So and my son's got hypermobility. I'm using my son because I don't want to use other people's, but trust me, there's loads of us out there. And he didn't get diagnosed with hypermobility until he was 15. And I only knew it was double jointed. And it was really weird because I was like, he's really bright. Why are you writing? You could not get my boy to write for nothing. And it turned out he was so severe with the pain and the fatigue, he was 99 percentile. So 98 kids his same age were better than him. So it's like, I'll get my laptop. Fine. My son can't use a laptop, and this is going to sound crazy. You talk about sensory ain't just your smell, you all that. It can be the feel. So when you've got a laptop, you can't feel them buttons. Sometimes when it's just big. My son is a gamer. He's got a piece, and he likes a clonk because he needs that clonk. So me being me, and he knew how that keyboard was laid out. I had to buy that keyboard to attach to the laptop with the mouse that he was used to, which they just expect you just to comply with what you've got. You know, and I was like, what room are you putting him in? Because that's on his own. We're like, no, you need to be taking him in that room. Does that make no one's doing this with these kids that are intelligent? And they're the ones, I always say all along, they're the ones that you've got most chance of getting, I know it sounds awful, but massive success. That can go on to work. That can actually really add a lot to your workplace. And some, you know, I mean, some of the ones that, a couple I know has gone to Guys and worked in there as a porter and that. And they say they love him. They love him because they're there every day on time. They never go sick. You give them a job to do, they do it. But it's all the other bits that's needed And it's forgotten about because they're academically able and therefore within the education system, that's a sorry. But I want to say,
Thank you.
I'm 57 now, really shouldn't be doing this, but I do this, or we'll do it. 11 of us do it for free, and we do it because we believe, not just in our kids, but in Southwark. I walk most of my time. I mean, I've had to have someone go and sit with my son to come there, but it's an investment for us. And us that are ones who do our group, we can see the good. And it is a great team there for me. When I started out, would I have been willing to do this? No, because I wouldn't have believed in it. But I've seen the change, and we are part of the change. And we appreciate you asking us to come along.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you. That was great. I think the health point is really interesting because there is a commission that looks exclusively at health and social care, and actually, there may be an action here for us to link up with them and see
Brilliant.
how we can do some cross work. So yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay, or you can go. But thank you. I might just suggest a quick comfort break if that works for everybody. So if we can be back in the room just before past, and then we'll start. finish shortly after 9, but I do want to make sure we've got enough time to hear from all 4 of our speakers tonight on item 6, early intervention and SEND, including EHCPs, which are education and healthcare plans for those who aren't familiar. So I think this is a really great item to build on the personal experiences we've heard tonight. So over to you guys to introduce yourselves and share what you've got to say.
Okay, hello, I'm Anna Shiver, the Assistant Director for SEND and Inclusion.
Hi everyone, I'm Jo Gould and I'm part of the early years team. So I'm Kathy Johnson, therapy team, early years service. Hi, and I'm Lindsay McClung, I'm head of speech language therapy. Children's.
Great, so I'm going to start off and just kind of start with kind of an overview of some of the things we've been doing in terms of early intervention, some of the specifics around our statutory assessment activity around our EHCP and improvement around performance, and then going to go into a really lovely detail around what we're doing in terms of speech and language therapy and some of the really kind of revolutionary stuff it's making. So you're probably all really knowledgeable about the fact that early intervention is one of the few things that are really evidence-based that make a huge difference, fundamental difference for children, young people. Support children early, then you can improve their life chances, you can improve their outcomes in terms of their mental health, you support education early, support their emotional well-being, emotional literacy, which ultimately reduces mental health risk and all those sorts of things. We're well evidenced, well documented about the need to identify young people's needs, put provision in place to support those needs, which ultimately is going to improve life outcomes for young people. In our special needs strategy, we've got 4 areas, and one of our core areas is about high and timely identification of young people, e.g. early provision. We developed that SEND strategy, and you heard a little bit from Nikki very passionately, and I love the fact that she called us a team, because it is a team, and we are working in true partnership with our Parent Care Forum and our parents, which is really great. But they've told us about the fact that actually we need to be more dynamic, we need to be more multifaceted in terms of our approach to early intervention, including working with our health partners in the room here, and bringing that together to respond to some of those rising demand and rising needs. Some of the early intervention approaches that I'm going to talk to you about aren't exhaustive of what we're doing, and certainly doesn't negate all of the really good work that's going on in our schools already. So there's lots of fantastic work that's going on. We have mental health work, support workers in schools, in all of our schools. We have early intervention support that goes routinely as part of the graduated response into support our young people. The programs that I'm going to talk to you about, some of those things which are kind of over and above that really support and target young people who otherwise might go on to need more specialist support like an EHCP plan if their needs aren't met earlier. I'm just going to talk through some of those programs. We've rolled out with support from our health colleagues something called our social communication interaction pilot, and that's focusing on 15 young people or cohorts of young people who've got identified social communication needs. They don't have to have an autism diagnosis. We're prioritising those young people going into year R because we know there's lots of reception year. There's lots of young people who are coming up from nursery. They've got social communication needs. They may or may not be on a waiting list, but our schools are telling us they're struggling to support those children. So we're really thinking about this. I think it's right we're talking about early intervention and a test and learn model. I think it's entirely right that we think about the methodology we're working with. So we're reflecting on the framework that our health partners use in terms of how we might roll that out. We've got kind of 2 different groups that we're thinking about. Might be the group methodology and individual support, but we will be rolling out targeted intervention and programs for those 15, either small groups or individuals, to ultimately support those young people over kind of a 2-year program, with the view and aspiration that the school will be able to generalise the skills, which we heard a little bit about from Nikki, that doesn't often happen, that they're learning from that one individual or from the group work, and that those young people's needs are met earlier and supported better. So that's a kind of a test and learn part of our pilot, and we're launching that from this September. And it's been really well received, actually, hasn't it? I'm just talking to Lindsay because she's part of the programme. And it's one of the first things we've been doing as a collaboration, isn't it, in terms of fundamentally thinking with our occupational health therapists as well. So we've heard from Nick about sensory needs, really thinking about how we can support those young people, and really, really clearly about how we can support those schools to support a wider group of children. It's one of the things we're rolling out and piloting this year, and we will start to see the impact of that probably fairly quickly. And again, there's training for parents within that, feedback very clearly from Nikki that we've got to work with those family groups and work with them in school settings. We expect to see that impact really within a term and a half. But the real kind of vision and aspiration is that we will see that those young people go on to, you know, be able to communicate more effectively, or whatever that young person's needs might be. The schools might say we want them to sit on a carpet. Actually, for that young person, it might be that they are able to go on a play date with a friend, you know. So trying to think about what that looks like. We've developed a specialist resource provision at the Grove Nursery, which is part of Kintor Way in the Grove. We have launched 12 part-time placements and 4 supported placements. That's really to support and identify those young people who've got quite complex learning needs and quite complex social communication needs, and think about those pathways more effectively, support that in more time intervention, again, with speech and language therapy and occupational therapy, in targeted intervention, but really critically to make sure we've got the right pathways for those young people. The 4 supported placements are where we can offer outreach back into those maintained nurseries, both at Kintor Way and Grove. So for those young people who we recognise have got complex needs, but actually can thrive in that more bustling environment of an early years mainstream setting, but ultimately need higher levels of support. So we recognise, although that's early intervention, it is supporting a slightly more complex cohort of children. We've established a multi-agency transition panel, which is really specifically looking at young people going from year 6 to year 7. And that's to focus on young people who've got a range of needs. Nikki talked about that. So they might have social care needs, they might be on CP register. They'll be presenting as needs identified by schools as young people who might be struggling with school-based avoidance. We might think they're at risk of dropping out of school. They might need more support in terms of literacy support. They might have some behaviours of concern. So we have panels that sit 3 or 4 times a year, chaired by our SEND consultant, our SEND specialist advisor. It's a multi-agency panel, and through that we give specific targeted outreach. So it could be there's multiple kind of outcomes for that. That we might give a level of funding, targeted funding before an EHCP plan that supports that child with outreach from our specialist teachers. It might be that we have a cohort of children going to a certain school that we will give specialist training to that school, plus targeted outreach and support for that family. It could be that we're working with our mental health teams and we're linking up with our transition team. The whole host of outreach and support that we give, and that's predominantly for children without EHCP plans, or who are on that assessment pathway. And we will see, we're just tracking our first cohort of young people going through, but even from our feedback from our SENCOs this year, and some of our parents have been involved in that, the young people have found that really supportive in terms of being more confident about the part that meeting the secondary school, understanding what the impact will be, etc. And then building upon that kind of whole true system approach, which sounds slightly ironic considering what we heard earlier from Nikki and the challenges as well from Councillor Ali, but all of us here are really feel deeply passionate about SEND and making the system work, or else we wouldn't be here. And I think that recognising the importance of early use of language and social communication development and working with our families is something that is really critical to our work, particularly thinking about, Lindsay and others will talk about that, rolling out the Welcome tool, working with our partners from the Family Early Hub Centres and Children's Centres and those sorts of things. That will be talked about in more detail. But for us, that's a starting point for us to really build upon good practice. I'm going to talk about SENDIF funding. We've talked a little bit about early years provision previously, but we have invested a significant amount of money. SENDIF is essentially a fund that we provide for early year settings and nursery settings to support children in early year settings. In 2023, we supported 140 children. We've since then invested a significant amount of money to the SENDIF funding to support by 147% increase to support a wider range of children in early years. And the reason we've done that is because we recognise the significance and importance of addressing and meeting needs earlier. And part of those key changes is making sure we can support children earlier and in a more timely way. So that's including recruiting an area Senko, but also thinking about that support ranging into year R. So although they might, a young person might not meet one of our social communication programs, actually we are going to be agreeing that rollover of the SENDIF funding to our year reception classes. So actually there won't be a drop from our SENDIF funding in your nursery into your reception. So we're trying to create more support and transition. And along with that SENDIF funding, there's much greater involvement and discussion about our pathway planning, triaging our children, making sure we identify the most common. So there are 3 levels of SENDIF funding, triage, and we're using that in a multi-agency way to plot which children we can support in the most effective way. EHC timeliness is not where we need to be. I'm not going to say this is brilliant. It's a lot better than it was when I first started. It was significantly, it was very poor in January. It was at 10% timeliness, which is really not where any local authority needs to be. We are now just below the national average, which is about 48% in timeliness. There's been a significant improvement. There are, I think, about 4 or 5 cases which are still in kind of what we call a backlog, which absolutely hate that terminology. And that's in part, we're having very specific conversations with those families about what that looks like and moving those young people on. All of those young people have provision and have support in place, but we are working through some of that administrative element of that. As I said, there's been a huge rate of progress, and that's being achieved through root and branch reorganisation of the statutory processes in terms of how we organise the administrative process around that, the timeliness, the decision making, organisation of kind of triaging within the SEND service. But we are absolutely, I'll just go on to the next slide, reliant on our partners within the education, health and care system. So we will never be able to achieve 100% or 90% or 80% unless our partners are able to get that advice in on time. And there are a number of factors which impact that. So in terms of our timeliness, so there's a slide on here which looks strange with lots of lines going along. So you can see generally, it's not on here, but there's an increasing demand in education, health and care plans. But the amount of professionals that we have to deliver those education, health and care plans haven't kept up. So we know that there's a national shortage of educational psychologists. We know that there's a national shortage around speech and language therapists, and that capacity to deliver speech and language therapy assessments, and that directly relates to our commissioning of speech and language therapy. And some of that social care assessment activity relates more to some of our designated social care officer being absent. So there are some particular specific issues which have affected that. But, and what is really positive is we have our SEND Partnership Board, which is taking a really strategic view and lens on this in terms of challenging that across our partnership and taking it outside of just a SEND specific area of discussion and raising it so we can actually have really clear conversations with our colleagues about what we need to do and how we can offer critical challenge, but also support to each other. And what does that look like in terms of thinking about engagement with, educational psychologists from other boroughs, thinking about how we can work with Royal College of Speech and Language Therapy, all of those sorts of things at a strategic level. There have been, you may not be as excited about this, but we use now a tool which Alistair has been using for many years in social care called Power BI. So we've been having lots of Excel spreadsheets, which I've had to use to try and understand what our performance data looks like. We now have something called Power BI. It's a really brilliant data dashboard tool, which at a button shows me where we aren't performing as well, what we need to do about it, and what that looks like. So you can drill down on that data in a much more effective way. That coming into place, we've just sort of piloting it. It came out about 6 days ago, but from probably the middle of September, that will help everyone in our system be much clearer about our performance, and certainly for us to be able to drill down into data in a much more tangible and easy way. lastly, just to talk about that co-production, and I know Nikki really doesn't like the word co-production, but it's a strategic word that we use. We have been doing a lot of work, undertaking a lot of work in terms of reviewing our EHCNA documentation. So for our annual review documentation, EHCNA application forms, which our schools have told us are really cumbersome and don't work. Our parents have told us it's really cumbersome and don't work. It doesn't really place children at the centre of that kind of application and that process. So we've been doing 6 in-person workshops with our schools and practitioners to look at how we can change some of that documentation. We're doing a whole series of events with Nikki from the PCF and parents in this autumn term, where we will be looking at developing and co-producing some documents. So it's a golden thread from that point of your assess, plan, do, review cycle, so the early intervention all the way through to your EHC plan. So you can actually see that progress that young person's made without reinventing the wheel. And that just talks about some of the intervention that we've put in place around EHCP process and early intervention. It's not exhaustive, but I'm going to hand you over to some of the juicy bits.
There we go. So, hi everyone. So, just to repeat me, my name is Jo, and I work right here in Southwark, and I'm a quality improvement officer for the early years team. And we are a small team, but we are a dedicated, committed team. And for me, what we do at the core of what we do is driving those outcomes for children. So, in essence, we work with our early years professionals, our nurseries, our childminders, who are on that frontline service, really. So, we go in and we support them around quality improvement, raising outcomes for our children, working with Ofsted to improve our Ofsted inspections, looking at training so we can upskill and broaden knowledge, because that's what it's always going to be about. The core of what we do is children. So that's what we do as a team. And also in with that, we have different specialisms that we can offer to our early year settings. And mine is speech, language and communication. We often think about, when we talk about speech, language and communication, that we use words like it's crucial, it's vital, it's important. It is sort of with children for life. If we don't put interventions in now, this can affect children, have long-lasting impact. Things like applying for university places, applying for jobs, it can have that long-standing impact. But we use words like crucial and vital, and it is. But for me, it's deeper than that. It goes much deeper. When we think about children having a voice, children being heard, it is actually the core of being a human being. And communication is that engine that to society is what makes us go round. So that's how important I think it is. We often say speech, language and communication. That's words, but it's having that understanding of what that impact is. And for me as a professional, it's what drives me forward. It's what can I do to improve those outcomes for children so they have that voice, they're listened to. When children become 13 and 14, it could be too late. It's about what are we doing now to give our boys and our girls in Southwark a voice as they grow up. So that's how important I think it is. So that's a big chunk of what I do. So how can we help our settings? So I do speech, language and communication at that universal and targeted tiers before it goes to specialism. So, and our settings, our nurseries and our childminders are sometimes feeling overwhelmed with the percentage of children they have under their care who have some kind of speech, language and communication need. So we as a team look at what can we do above that ordinarily available provision. So that's where I come in. So that's where my specialism is. So I have extra qualifications where I go in and I support settings on how to help those children who have that potential speech, language and communication need. So what can we do? So one of those things is by putting in things like interventions that are going to make a difference and have an impact. And it's also about working with our settings and working with our parents. So we do intervention programs like Early Words Together, where it's very much in that home learning environment where we're supporting our settings to support our families about what can they be doing at home to continue to support their children. Because we know, learning doesn't end at 6 o'clock when that childminder home finishes or the nursery finishes. What else can we be doing to support parents, to support settings, to support families? So it's very much around looking at this home learning environment and letting parents know, letting families know that actually what they are doing is great. But how can we help them to enhance it? So it's about not always what parents say, it's about what parents do. What are they doing in that home learning environment to continue to support their children's speech, language, and communication? So that's what we do. So we have a wonderful programme from the National Literacy Trust called the Early Words Together. So the National Literacy Trust are very much in partnership with us. It's a National Literacy Trust programme, but it's very much a Southwark thing. So this is about, we're working at the moment with Early Words Together 3 and 4, but Southwark were very, very lucky that in 2020, we were part of a pilot programme for under twos. So I very much talk about, it's about what are we doing now to make a difference. So at the moment, we're doing Early Birds Together 3 and 4 because this is the group of children that were in those lockdowns, that were born, that were babies, when it's pivotal for our babies for communication when they can see our faces. We were in a time when we were being covered up with masks. So these children are now 3 and 4. So there's lots of statistics, lots of information, lots of research that's telling us these children are now struggling around things like understanding words, listening, attention, concentrating, having a focus. I often think we are privileged as adults sitting here today. You are understanding what I'm saying. You can articulate, you can listen to what I'm saying, you can respond. Just imagine what that must be like if you don't understand what I'm saying, if you're struggling to pay attention. What that must be like. You don't understand what anybody is saying. And then add on to that, you're age 2 or you're age 3, and you're just beginning to learn about the world. How frightening this must be. So we're doing this intervention programme. We're currently working with 40 settings. This is across the early years sector, and this is working with childminders, early years provisions like nurseries and schools. And what we're doing is we're working alongside National Literacy Trust to put this programme in where settings are working with families, and then they're doing certain activities, like an intervention programme over 6 weeks, and the parents are coming into the settings and they're being part of those activities. And then what we're looking at is that the parents then go home and replicate these types of activities at home. So they're being with their children, they're being seen, they're using language that is supporting children's language to extend. So the whole intervention programme is 6 weeks, because we know through a 6-week intervention programme, this can make a difference. This can have an impact on our children. So each week for an hour, the settings deliver with the parents there, with a group of children, this intervention programme. And each week focuses on a different activities lasting for an hour that has key messages linked to speech, language, and communication. And then these are replicated at home. In an ideal world, we would like the parents to come into the setting so they're experiencing that, they're learning from the practitioners that have had the specific training. But that always can't happen. We have our working parents, life is busy. So settings are very, very creative about how can they still implement a programme like this, and if parents can't attend it. So they video it, they then share it on Zoom, they take photographs, they talk through the photographs. The point is that we're supporting parents to be able to deliver these activities at home. So that's one thing that we do. And the beauty of that programme is that it could be used as a universal tool to support all children developing their language skills, or we can use it as very much a targeted type programme where we're looking at working with specific children. The the impact of this, because it's always going to be about what the outcome and what the impact is. And we have parents that come back and tell us what has been this impact. And that's what these photographs show here. So we had one parent that came back to us and said, looking at an activity around extended talk, and this is where we add one word. So if a child says bus, we're encouraging parents to help that child to extend it. So it becomes a one word to a two word. So you might say red bus. And then when that child says red bus, we are then saying, yes, a big red bus. So to us, this is all really quite basic, simple things. But actually, it's about helping parents to understand these small little things can make really big differences. So we had a parent, so a manager told us that the parent came to the door, opened the door, and the bus was going past the road. And she heard dad turn around and said, and the child said bus, and the dad said, yes, a big red bus. So this has been the impact. And, you know, this is a 2-year-old child that is then being listened to and being valued and being extended. The other picture is just a scribble. We were doing the intervention program Early Words Together, and I was invited to First Place, who was part of the program, to go and meet some of the parents that were being part of it. And we had a big celebration, giving out certificates and things. And a mum came up to me and she said, I just want to thank you for this intervention program. She said, I never understood what scribble. I thought it was scribbles. I didn't know it was mark making. She said, when he brings home his pictures, I saw it as scribbles. She said, I'll be honest with you, I used to throw it away as soon as he had forgotten about it. She said, since doing this intervention program, I now realise that doing those scribbles, which is mark making, is the precursor to writing. So my child is a competent writer and competent at those early literacy skills. But this is parents realising what an impact these types of intervention programs can be.
I am just going to do a super quick time check.
Sure.
This is such important stuff, and I don't want us to lose any of it, but I'm mindful of how much there is still to get through, and I want to make sure there's some questions. So
Yeah,
it's 5 to 9 now. If we go till just after 9, hearing from you guys,
right.
and we'll jump into some questions if that
Yeah, I'll
sounds
whiz it through.
all good.
I can whiz.
Thank you.
So alongside that, we have put the Making It Real, which is the raising early achievement in literacy. So this is about helping our children around those 4 strands of early literacy, helping children to think about and helping parents to understand that importance of early literacy skills. So looking at how can parents at home be supporting children understanding around what mark making is to that precursor to early writing, looking at the importance of books and storytelling and how we can support children to extend their words through that, looking at the print in the environment, and of course looking at how we use oral language, how we support our children to extend that language. So this is called the Real Programme. This again is around the home learning environment. So we have practitioners that have come to the training and then they deliver this. It's a referral system. So they then refer and then the Real Programme can be delivered in that home environment. And then you'll see on that chart there, on the top is those 4 strands of early literacy that I mentioned. And then on the left-hand side column, those are what families can provide. We know families have those opportunities to work with their children and be with their children and share experiences with children. They can recognise things, what the children are doing, and interaction. As part of this whole SLC pathway that we're doing, we're also working with Kathy and working with Lindsay around introducing the welcome. I'm not going to say too much because that's going to be your bit, but we're just part of that programme as well and working together and to bring that into our early year settings.
So much, Joanne. Okay, got me squish on a bit more. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so just to reintroduce myself, I'm Kathy Johnston. I'm one of the early years speech language therapy team leads in our Evelina service, which covers both Lambeth and Southwark boroughs. And the part that we're sort of contributing here, a chance to share the video. Work. I wondered if it worked on the website. The link's should be built in. It's a YouTube link. Maybe we can send you the link, but definitely please watch it. If I share a little bit what the video is, basically, it's being released by RADL, Raising Awareness of DLD, which is developmental language disorder, a hidden disability around communication and language needs. And the point of this is that in every classroom of 30 children, there'll be 2 children who have statistically have DLD, developmental language disorder, typically unidentified or undiagnosed, because takes quite a lot of time, as Nikki was referring to. These things take time because when you're working with pediatric, you're looking at development, and so you don't want to. You're looking at how children are growing and developing, and how things move for them, and where they are, and how they interact in a moment. So it's about raising awareness of them in the classroom, and part of the sort of point we're here is this idea of understanding the scale of need that we have in speech language therapy as a team. The work that my team do is in early years, so it is under 5, and we have been very fortunate to be able to maintain universal and targeted provision as a health offer throughout last years, and that we've continued to maintain and grow that. And it's around sort of keeping awareness and of identification of communication need. So the video highlights the fact that in the UK, there's, we know that there's up to 50% of children present with a speech language communication need, which may or may not progress without support to become something more serious, or something that needs a lot more work and input and intervention. So that's sort of some stats for you to see. The group that we're looking at, the bottom right-hand side, are the children who have diagnoses of communication needs, for example, autism or other complex needs. That 7.56 of all children have a developmental language disorder are the often unrepresented groups, because it's not an obvious need. And so it's not seen in our early years settings. We're seeing now early years practitioners are much better at seeing the early sort of red flags for neurotypical needs, or some developmental needs around autism, for example, but communication particularly is missed. So just to give you a bit of an understanding of how our services worked, we have, as I said, been able to maintain really quite good partnership working between health and education local authorities of both boroughs to support our pathway view for being able to find the children. This is sort of the work that the team that I am supporting does. We work at universal, targeted and specialist. So it seems strange for a speech language therapist to talk about universal speech language therapy, but the point of that is that we believe every parent needs to understand and has the right to know what is typical communication development, what can they do to support that, and when it's not going right, where do they get help? Those are the key points of the universal teams. That's for parents and practitioners in the early years as well. And that means that then we can find those children who need targeted support in that sort of ordinary available practice in settings, that we can make sure that the workforce around them in early year settings, whether they're childminders, whether they're in a private, voluntary and independent nursery setting, or when they're in a nursery class moving into reception class, that they can get the right support in their setting, and their family can also get the right information about what they can do at home, and those two things can work together before they get to speech language therapy as a referral, because we know they have that identified need. So the point of us being here was this idea of introducing a tool, which is we've been using in our team. We've piloted it through different opportunities that we've had. And it's looking at screening, which can sometimes be contentious, because there's risk of screening that you identify too many children or not quite enough children with need. The point that we make here is this idea that we wanted to introduce the screening tool because we aren't seeing the population that we expect to see who would have statistically that need of DLD particularly, or language need in, as separate to autism or neurodiverse needs. So we know that in our referral base as a team speech language therapy, we do not see the numbers of children referred with language needs. We do have huge proportion of children with autism or autism related needs on our caseloads. That is the majority of our caseload. We are not having those language referrals coming through to our team. And we know that these mild to moderate language delays can be missed by parents and practitioners, as well as health professionals even, because they don't always have good tools to help them identify that. And that's the point of make here to using the tool. The tool we're talking about that Anna is referred to is the Wellcome. It's been around for a while now, came through an NHS trust, and it's a screen. So screens are always a blunt tool to sort of look for to a high level of need. It's meant to be quick. It is quick, but it's in separate stages from 6 months to 6 years for the tool we've used in early years. They've extended it now to be a primary tool, and as I referred to, that's something we're looking at to make it that sort of transition a longer term pathway into schools as well from our early years work that we've been piloting for some time. It's a RAG rating. So it's meant to be a very quick tool for practitioners or in health or in education to be able to use and get a very quick indication of what they should do next, which has always been the fall down when we've used other tools, for example, that came through DFE and Every Child a Talker, that the sort of what do I do now that I've found the need? What's my next step in the pathway? And so if the child has a significant need, i.e. they come out as red, then they get an immediate referral to our team as well as support. If they come out as amber, then we're looking at where they're at right now and what are the things that are missing. What do you start putting your interventions in place as a setting, and what information can you give parents? See if they're green at that moment in time, it's always a moment in time, making sure that there's universal provision information available. So we've used this as a sort of in that sort of iteration of active learning that Anna was referring to. We've been using it in the Lambeth Early Action Partnership as the opportunity that we had as in working in that project, and that's where we introduced the use of the Wellcome as a screen within the nurseries that we had involved there. We then moved it into part of our universal targeted support from speech language therapy into children's centres across both Southwark and Lambeth, training those children's centre staff to be able to use that with families that are accessing their services. As Joanne said, we've been using it with the families, the nurseries who've been involved in early words together as the next step for those nurseries to be able to then identify children that are coming through their nurseries who are then perhaps amber or red that can then be referred back into those interventions that Joanne was talking about. And we've introduced it as a screen alongside the ASQ3 or the Ages and Stages questionnaire, which is used by child development workers and health visitors as one of the universal health checks, because we know that we're not catching children through the universal health checks enough to be meeting that. So that's where we've been using it so far. And the point is that we can sort of build to a bigger pathway strategically that is moving, as I said, to be able to get the input there. Anyway.
Second. Councillor Hartley, Councillor Hamlet. Okay. Oh, apologies. I wondered if you were making an intervention for this very moment.
Stop her talking.
Apologies. Everyone's so keen. Well, look, you're first on the list, guys, now. So, right, apologies. Apologies back to you. Yeah, that's 2 to 5 minutes max, and then good questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, so basically that this slide, it's in your deck there, is just to show you that once you've identified need, where people can go. And it's not just education, it's health as well. It's this idea that we're working much more collaboratively and say that it is strategic, that parents understand that we're talking about welcome, that when we say, so this is where we're at, this is what the tool we're using in the nursery. Your health visitor may have talked about it, your nursery worker may have talked about it, and this is what it means. This is what we want to do. And, does that make sense for you at home? So it's moving it through. As an example of the impact that's had from some of our health visiting team. Yeah, and I think we've covered all of it.
Okay, I will try to be very quick. Kathy's referenced a lot of our universal targeting specialist offer. In addition to our targeted nursery offer and the welcome delivery, we do have quite a long-standing universal access to chat time sessions that we 11 across the week, and they're really well attended by families. And certainly we encourage health visitors to refer, children's centres to refer. We run them jointly with children's centres. So I think we've got quite a lot going on that is available. However, I suppose I'll just talk about the specialist bit because I know it's always a bit of a headline. But we have worked really hard since COVID, where we were at a 30-week wait for our front door into the service, and we're now at an 8-week wait. So, I think that hopefully will begin to really feel meaningful to families, that they can access support in their local health centre or children's centre. We've also got a lot of digital offer as well for families who want to engage with that. But yes, I think probably I will wrap up, take questions.
Oh, thank you so much, and apologies that we have such short time to cover these topics, but that was really great, and I think we got a good overview of a lot there. So thank you. I do have Councillor Hartley first on the list, followed by Councillor Hambus.
I was really struck by the chart on page 20 pack here, which by the way is really helpful. But a couple of mentions made in your presentations about how much we're actually capturing the problems that are out there, and the people that have issues and should be receiving support. So in comparison to these kind of figures, what are we seeing in terms of the currently understood position within Southwark, and how does that relate to the national figures that we see here on 20? It's very helpful chart. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be back to that proverbial back of a fag packet, but are we picking up 10% or 60%, or do we not have a ballpark? I think it would be helpful because I mean the really strong thing we heard from the parents representative earlier was that the children that are missed and the time that it takes. Obviously, I appreciate you're working with each other and know that, to give us an idea of the scale of that sort of unknown, that the known are in the system, and will hopefully receive them.
Councillor Hambus.
Thank you. I'll be a bit greedy because I've got a couple of questions. COVID, mentioned COVID. Are you seeing a long-term effect of COVID on young children's language development? Are the numbers much higher than they would have been a few years ago amongst your especially the 4 to 6? And do you think that could be a permanent problem, both children as they grow up? That was my first question. My second question was in relation to autism, and that you're saying a lot of the children who you are dealing with are on the autistic spectrum or neurodiverse. Are you finding children that are referred to you with similar issues? Are they being referred back to see if they might be neurodiverse and might be on the spectrum, but the language might be the first issue, and then they're referred to you? Does that happen? So that's my second question. And also my third question is about that Southwark is a very diverse borough, quite a melting pot of people from all over the world live in Southwark. What about those children who come in who may be are hearing a mixture of languages in the nursery setting and at home, and how does that impact their language developments. I have heard in the past that actually their language development later is better, but is maybe poor early on when they're hearing two languages. I'm just curious about that. Thank you. Sorry, 3 questions really.
I can do the last one first, perhaps. So we celebrate the multilingual status of the boroughs that we're in, and that message is very clear to our families in terms of that universal messaging that keep your language alive, speak your language first. It's your gift to your child, and yeah, definitely said that generally multilingual children have better educational outcomes. There can be confusion, I guess, around the difference. The messaging for practitioners is around the difference between speech language communication need and EAL, which are two very different things. And children who are developing language skills in a bilingual or multilingual environment will be able to pull those skills together. It takes a bit more time to process it and to plan it and to sequence it, but they will get to that place where they're using language proficiently in many languages. Perhaps children who have SLCN or speech language communication need will present with difficulty in their home language as well as in English, and that's part of that assessment process. So you're maybe questioning around the screen. The use of the tool that we've chosen is one that can be used. So a very valid point that should have been highlighted.
So I think
Thank you. I'll take these final 3 questions in a batch. Try and keep it to 1 question if you can, or roll 2 into 1, whatever you need to do. Jonathan?
Thank you very much. It was fascinating for me because I've had a speech. The referrals, they come, I assume, the 8 weeks, is that from referral until you guys get into it? Yeah.
Sorry, could you pop your microphone? It's for the audience online.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are many of them.
parents can refer nurseries, children's centres, health visitors are a big referral point, you know, 2-year check or
The timelines. Now, is that within the 16 weeks? Still less.
Yeah, so that's a 20-week timeline from the point we've received that. Yeah, that 20 weeks was provided to issue a plan. Yeah, and the plan will be issued. So we're about, I think it's actually 46 point something. It's not where we need to be. Some of those young people in the backlog are dragging that percentage down. Yeah, I mean, the national average strongly is 48%, but really I think we should be aiming well into the 80%. There are strategic to support and think about in terms of some of our commissioning ways.
Yeah, thank you. Really impressive work. Thank you very much for that. I was just wondering, we know that the earlier the the better in any economic. How do we make sure, particularly at the earliest stage, that nobody the cracks and particularly when parents wouldn't. I grew up in Germany where there is other countries as well. There are mandatory checks with mental and intellectual capacity ages starting from 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, etc. It's very, very early age. Is there something similar in the UK, and would that be something that you think is helpful?
We do, yes, there is universal health checks, and they do start from birth, and the developmental points where there's and meant to be using the ASQ, which is the screen that I referred to. So that's one of their universal screens that are mandated. We know that that communication is part of that, along with other development. And then the two from us historically, there's a bit of a thing about speech and language therapy being identified at 2, which we find tricky. That's when children start to talk, but usually the work to language started from way before, from birth. So it's about helping raise that awareness, as you say, and sharing key messages with parents through our university, by speech therapists doing it, but by our colleagues doing those help sharing those. Parents know their children better than anyone, and it's about helping them be aware of what to expect, what is development at each point, and where can they get help if they're not sure, and then how can they find a speech language therapist. And that's the point then of the targeted and universal input that Lindsay was describing in that last slide, is that they can find us in lots of different places, but it's about pulling that all together, health visiting and midwifery, make sure that our bit comes up in their checks as well. We can't do all of it.
Going to come in. So I think there's a kind of a vision piece as well for us in terms of work our family hubs as well, and making sure that, I know Lindsay, you're going to be basing one of those, making sure we're really thinking in our communities about how do we better promote those checks with some of those communities that might be less engaged, and thinking about how we deploy resources and support differently, and sort of coalesce those support in a more of a systemic way based in localities, and thinking about what that will look like. And then piece for us, I think, is about how we then use that data to better sort of focus our activity for some of those communities.
So could I just make a point? Well, just for the early years sector, I think this is also where early years practitioners, and a lot of our children could be identified when they're in early years provision or childminders. So I'm thinking about your question. I think it's also about how we support to upskill our, they feel confident, that they're aware of what development is and that expected development first, so they know that and know that well. So when they then can identify if there's a potential need, that there's something there. And we do a lot of training within the borough, so we're helping settings to identify and to support where to go when they need that extra bit. So I think that just does the full circle there.
And finally, Councillor Hussain.
Yeah, very brief from me. Thanks for a fantastic presentation. Just in terms of my knowledge and understanding and awareness, kind of what are the signs to look out for in terms of needs for speech communication? And like top 3, or was that? Is it exhaustive? High level.
It is a 2.5-day course, and you're very welcome. Yeah. It's on our website. It is. So it's looking at attention skills from the phase, being able to have interaction. I think is what Nikki was describing, that idea of interest, communication, motivation, and so social motivation to interact, from turn taking, from non-verbal communication coming first, because babies do that, and we'll start copying adults in hours and things. So it's those sorts of skills that we're looking at early, way before we see words. 16 gestures by 16 months as recursive verbal communication that comes from that non-verbal. We're looking from non-verbal eye contact, interest in condition, not necessarily eye contact, face interest, motivation, and then look at speech sounds, motor development, whole body stability for breath control, speech sounds. So it's just about child has interest, make sounds gradually. Those sounds, those words, gesture, those sort of taster to come and join our.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just absolutely fascinating. And I don't think I've ever seen such a thorough and detailed report. So thank you for the time that you put into that. And I think that was a great introduction into one of the key work streams that we'll be looking at this year, early intervention. We will be coming back to EHCP specifically, but it's great to see there has been some improvement already since we requested for you guys to come along. So thank you very much. Welcome. Okay. Yes, fascinating. So what we're going to do now is come on to, I believe, the final or penultimate item of business, which is looking at the work plan for the upcoming year. So hopefully it's been clear from tonight that a key area that I am keen for us to explore more around is early intervention and EHCPs. But of course, this commission isn't just focused on education and children. We're also focused on the local economy. So it is by no means a small brief for us to cover. So I'm really interested to hear from members tonight, briefly, if possible, around anything around those two areas that you think we might need to cover across the year. And I should also say that something I think will be really valuable is pre-scrutiny, and that's really the tone I've tried to set for this evening in terms of what's been brought forward. So bringing Councillor Ali at the start of the year so we can look at her plan and then scrutinise it later. And then you'll see on the agenda for next time, which we had to set already, given the short notice of the next meeting, we'll be looking at the Town Centre Action Plan strategy, which is a brand new programme of work that is just being drafted. So we'll get to feed into that and actually contribute to how it looks later down the line. So that's my view. But yeah, really interested to hear what members think to that and if you've got anything additional that you add to the plan. Jonathan.
Like to absence. I think that the lots of schools. Different level.
Yeah, that's great. That links nicely to the inclusion charter piece that we heard tonight. So yeah, thank you. Put that down. Yep. Bentley.
So conscious we're covering local economy next time. Just advise that there'll be people being released in South East London this month, and I think in October, and just thinking about some of those people with additional skills, needs, about what we heard about adult education, thinking about linking that and together, thinking about the both hats that the commission wears.
Like that, really interesting. Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Any other thoughts or input? We don't need to decide the whole plan tonight, by the way. So please do get in touch if there's anything else. But Councillor Hartley.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of things. I mean, I'm also very interested in the impact of the school system. I would have thought it was probably sensible enough to take either on the same agenda as the absences and the route that leads to permanent exclusion, and to keep a close eye on, given where the trends are there. So I know they're not identical, but I think they can be combined in the same item. I'd also quite like us to look at what the council's processes are for keeping councillors and other communities in touch with and involved with local schools. Obviously, as local councillors, we rely on the council to some extent to tell us about what's going on, other than our contact with local. It'd be really useful to look at how, in the current remit of an education department, much change from when I was a lad and also doing that. But it would be useful to have that link, because as councillors we're expected to know this in our local communities and need to have access to.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, thinking about how many schools are in my own ward and how those connections are fostered. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, as I said, please do get in touch. I think I emailed the councillors in the room with some of these ideas at the start of the year. I did not email the co-optees, but I will make sure you're included next time. Sorry, Martin? Please, I will. I absolutely will. So yes, plenty of time to feed in. There's 4 more meetings scheduled for the rest of the year. The agenda for the next one on the 26th of September is set, but there are meetings in November, February, and April. And of course, we need to fill those agendas. One bit of AOB which was raised to me at the start is perhaps the need to reappoint what is member. So I'm not sure, Amit, whether that is in train. If you can give us an update very briefly.
So thank you, Chair. So as you know, as we spoke earlier, Lynette Murphy-O'Dwyer has stepped down as one of the mission reps. Catholic Diocese. We've emailed Lynette to get some more information as to people we need to contact so that they could appoint. So everything on are following that. So,
It's very long.